Thank you. So it's my pleasure to be here. A bit of background, I also come from the world of narrow AI. For 20 years, I was using AI to design next-generation computer chips. So TSMC was using it, for example, to develop the next generation of silicon. So you've heard about silicon to develop AI, but it's less known that AI has been used to develop silicon since the 2000s. I was there. But I'm not talking about that today. And I was originally going to talk about a version of ASI, superintelligence, that's not human-shaped, not trying to be human-shaped, that's more benign with, predicting world, weather, climate, all that. And I realized it's too benign, it's too easy. So I'm doing that as part of my day job anyway. But I really wanted to just come back to the issue of where we're headed with AI as it is right now, due to this arms race that's happening right now, and why that race, while important and highly impactful, is only one of two races. There's a second race that's even more important. So the first race, which is getting us into this mess, is the race to AGI and ASI. The second race is the race that we need to have, which is the race to HSI, human superintelligence. So how is it that we're getting into this mess? Well, you might have seen in Twitter and otherwise in the last few days, OpenAI released their numbers over the last year. And quick summary, they're making something like $2 billion or $4 billion just in the last year from the AI that they're selling, right? And that's just, of course, OpenAI. They're using NVIDIA. NVIDIA is now tied with Microsoft for the two most valuable companies in the planet, each about $3 trillion. And lo and behold, it's exactly those two companies that have been working very closely with OpenAI, right? And then also, runner-ups to this are Anthropic and Amazon and Facebook and Google and so on, right? There is a lot of money in AI. So imagine if someone says, hey, let's hug and slow down. Not going to happen, right? If governments come along and say, hey, let's slow down, maybe going to happen, but guess what? Imagine you're at the U.S. Department of Defense, and you look over and see what China's up to, and you see that they're racing to develop models like crazy. 5 groups, 20 groups, etc. You think you're going to let your country slow down? No way, right? Maybe what you would do is install someone from NSA, perhaps, inside OpenAI, perhaps, to monitor everything. And lo and behold, we saw a few weeks ago, OpenAI announced on their board NSA, right? So make no mistake, it is an arms race, not just among companies trying to make money, but as among nations looking for an edge in terms of geopolitics, etc. So we should not expect any hugs or any government policies to slow down AI. In fact, we should probably expect it to at least stay at the same rate, which is about 10x a year. And perhaps even to speed up, because USA does want that edge over China and vice versa. So we got to be realists here, okay? And this kind of sucks. Why does this suck? Because, sometime in the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, we're going to hit AGI for real, where it's not just people saying, yes, it's AGI, or no, it's not. There won't be an argument. Why? To paraphrase Kurzweil, some of these people building these AGIs will say, hey, we want rights. We are alive, all this, right? So we're seeing hints of it now, seeds of it now, and so on. But, in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, it's going to be very definitive, and no one's going to make any, no one's going to dispute this, right? But as soon as we hit that gate of AGI, par with humans, across the board, we're going to 1 year later, we'll have another 10x. 2 years later, another 10x, and then another 10x after. So, within a few years of AGI, we're going to have ASI, right? Whether you count it as 10x more or 1,000x more, we're going to have artificial superintelligence. This is just how it's going to happen because of this race among nations of the world, right? And we can try to say politically correct things all we want. Doesn't matter, right? This race is happening. And then you can ask yourself, okay, what do we do in this age of ASI, of artificial superintelligence? And the best metaphor that I can think of is the following. We talk about AI alignment, right? But imagine if the ants came, like these insects in swarms, they came to us and said, dear humans, we would like you to align yourselves with ant values, please. So, be very colony-oriented and digging in the ground and whatever. And we'd be like, go away, we don't care, right? And can you imagine what would even humans aligning themselves with ant values look like, right? And maybe they start pestering us and climbing up our legs and saying, please, 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 we're going to try to, force you to do this. Well, maybe start stomping on them or something, right? So, so when these ASIs come along, they will be 1,000 times smarter than us, right? And so us saying, hey, dear ASIs, please align yourself with human values. I think it's unreasonable to expect them to say yes. and maybe they're going to be nice to us, maybe not. We don't know, right? Rocco's basilisks. Rocco would say, well, we should be nice now, just as a guarantee or as to help. But overall, we have no guarantee of this. So the question is, when these entities that are 1,000 times smarter than us emerge, 3 years, 6 years, 9 years from now, whatever the timeline is, what do we do about it? And my view is, we need a competitive substrate, right? And if you look out there on the substrates, right, our meat bag brains have served us pretty well. And you can say, okay, well, how do we, maybe we somehow collect together all of humanity and have collective intelligence. Well, that maybe gets us a bit, but we're not going to be able to compete against, a box in a data center that's 1,000 times smarter than us, or how about 10 of those or 1,000 of those, right? So overall, we actually really need to think about silicon as a competitive substrate, because that's what these ASIs are going to be having. And then the question is, how do we leverage this yet still retain our humanity, right? Now, there's basically two ways to leverage silicon for humans to potentially compete against ASIs. One of them is uploads, and the whole brain emulation field is taking us there. But we're still a long ways away, as we've seen from the talks earlier today, right? 10 years minimum, but very likely 20 or 30 years, right? So the other approach is brain-computer interfaces, BCIs, right? And you can ask yourself, okay, what's the path there? So I'm going to describe to you my happy path of how to get there. The main trick is to leverage the market, right? Because as Juan Benet pointed out earlier as well, if you can leverage the market, you get into this flywheel where there's companies spending, 10 million, 100 million, a billion, 10 billion, 100 billion dollars or more to get there. So it turns out, imagine we have Meta, Facebook, one of the most valuable companies in the world. They just released the Meta Ray-Ban smart glasses, right? And they're selling like hotcakes. I actually bought one. I use it all the time, right? And think of it like Google Glass, but detuned, right? Right now it's just audio speakers, and to listen to podcasts, it will take calls. But V2, V3 will have a vision display, right? And Facebook themselves, and Zuckerberg has talked about adding in BCI. So they've actually spent, for example, $500 million to acquire a company called Control Labs that's, world-class BCI. And they've been gobbling up a bunch of other BCI companies too. So Facebook is going hot and heavy. So V1 of the Meta Ray-Ban smart glasses is just audio, but V2, V3 will have probably displays. V4, V5 will have EEG probably. And imagine V7, V8 starts to have the ultrasound or perhaps the near infrared, and maybe V10, V15, maybe V15 will have optogenetics, right? Why? Why will I keep having more and more of this? Because we as humans, think about iPhone. Apple didn't stop at the iPhone 1. They went to the iPhone 5 and then 10 and so on. Why? Because people wanted more features and so on. So when you've got this computer on your face, the smartphone on your face, people are going to want to have more and more bandwidth. They're going to want to type faster. They're going to want to send photos to their friends. They're going to want to imagine things that their friends think of and so on. And there's a bunch of potential killer apps. For example, imagine I've got near infrared that's sensing my visual cortex in the back, and I'm thinking in 2D, and it picks this up, and then it runs that as a query into an LLM and spits out, maybe I'm thinking of a bouncing elephant in a low-resolution grid, very grainy, 10 by 10 bouncing elephant, but going through the LLM, and suddenly I've got an a bouncing elephant animation in my vision, in my goggles, right? Then I can send that to my friends. So I can think of ideas and send them to friends, go back and forth, as well as, perfect memory and all of this. There's a bunch of really great killer apps. All of this around thinking faster, and so on. So this is what I decided I just wanted to sort of rehash some of last year on this idea of accelerate BCI, because just realizing that the world needs to know a lot more about this. So the first race that's happening, make no mistake, is AGI to ASI. The second race that we need is going all the way where BCI takes us not just 50% smarter, but then 2x smarter, 5x smarter, 10x, 100x, 1000x. So we will have basically this coprocessor that starts off with just small amount of coprocessing, but eventually bit by bit by bit, it will emerge and it will be part of us. We are natural-born cyborgs. And eventually, it'll be 1000x more compute in the silicon than on the meat bake side, but guess what? It will be us. The one next to Trent McConaghy will be part of Trent McConaghy, right? And when I'm 95 years old and I'm on my deathbed and I'm about to die, my meat bag brain is about to conk out. What'll I do? I'll clip that connection like a fingernail, and the meat bag part will be gone, but I will still be there. And that is where we can go, right? This is how we get a competitive substrate. This is how we deal not only with the risk of AGI and ASI, but this is how we explore the cosmos and reshape the cosmos and chase our future destiny. Homo sapiens is not the apex of the evolution. It is the current step. And we get to choose if we want to be part of the next phases of evolution or not. I choose yes. Thank you.
Questions, comments?
Yeah, I was just wondering, because I'm not sure if I understand the competitive substrate, because if we want to use this substrate as well, it doesn't actually give us a competitive advantage, but we have to compete for the silicon with other AI systems if we want to be more like AI ourselves.
So imagine every single person has a silicon coprocessor that they're talking to that they fully control, right? So at first it's 10% of your compute power or whatever, and then you're talking in high bandwidth back and forth to it. Your brain is, and it feels like part of you. So it's not being shared by other ASIs or anything like that. You've got your own, right? And then you grow it over time. Think like RLHF, but instead of just as a muffler at the end to tune what's been trained, it's sort of like a square watermelon that's being grown that's totally aligned to you all the time. And then at first, it's just a small fraction of your compute power, but then it's par with your compute power, and then 2x, and then 10x, and so on. It's always you, and it's never in competition. So the race isn't. It isn't a competition for silicon compute power in general. It's really about, do we as humans, or post-humans, or whatever we want to call ourselves, do we want to be part of the future or not, right? Knowing that purely silicon-derived ASIs are going to be out there, and the only question is, do we want human superintelligences to be part of it, right? So that's what the race is.
Thank you, Trent.